Hello and welcome to the fourth lecture in the Intro to Python series. In this lecture, we will be going over some more control flow tools in Python. First up is the for statement. The for statement lets you iterate over any sequence of elements, for example, list or string. So let's say you have a list of fruits as shown here, then you can do something like this. For fruit in list of fruits, print fruit. So the for statement lets you go over each of these elements sequentially in the order in which they appear. You can also go over a loop of elements in a string. So you could write something like for char in string print char. You can also nest a for loop inside another for loop. So for example, if you had like a list of fruits as shown here, you could do something like for fruit. You could have another loop that goes through each of the elements of fruit because it's a string. So something like for x in fruit, print x. So as you can see, it will first pick the element apple to be fruit, and then x will go over each of these elements within the string, so a, p, p, l, e, and then it exits the loop, and then fruit becomes kiwi, and then x goes through all the characters inside the kiwi string. If you need to iterate over a sequence of numbers, Python has a default built-in function called range. So you can do something like for I in range 1 to 10, print I. So as you will see, I will go from starting 1 all the way up to 10 minus 1, and you can print all these values. So something to know here is that the endpoint is never part of the generated sequence by the range function. Now, by default, the range function will generate numbers at an increment of 1. So for example, we saw here, starting from 1, it generated numbers at increments of 1, so 1, 2, 3, etc., all the way up to the endpoint. You can, however, modify the step size, so you can do something like for I in range 1 to 10, and you can specify a step size, for example, 2, and then if you print I, then you will see that the numbers start from 1, but this time it gets incremented by 2 at every step. So it goes from 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and so on all the way up to the value 9. You can also have a negative step size. So you can do something like for I in range of 10 to 1 with a step size of -1, and we can print I. So what this will do, it will start from the value 10, and at every step it will add -1 to it, so reduce 1 from it, and go all the way up to 2. So it starts from 10, 9, 8, 7, and all the way up to 2. If you had reversed this, and if you had set 1 to 10, and then -1, then you would get nothing, because it's impossible to go from 1, decrease it, and reach all the way up to 10. So when you're using negative steps, it's important to start from higher value and then end in a lower value, as you would expect. When using the range function, you can skip the start value and it will default to 0. So you can, if you write something like for I in range 5, print I, then the start value will default to 0, and then it will go with increments of 1 all the way up to 5 minus 1. If you want to iterate over the indices of a sequence, you can do that by combining the range and the len function. So for example, if you want to iterate over the list of fruits, you can write that as for idx in range len of list of fruits. You can do print idx, comma, list of fruits of idx. If you run this, idx basically goes from 0 all the way up to 3. So the len of the list over here is 4, so range will go from 0 to 3. And at every iteration, you are printing the index as well as the element at that index. So getting the index of the element along with the element itself, as we did here, is a very common operation that you will need in most cases. So Python has a built-in function that lets you do exactly this in the form of enumerate. So you can do something like for I, comma, fruits in enumerate list of fruits, print I, comma, fruit, and and you will get exactly the same output as you did when you first looped over the indices and accessed the element at that index. Instead, you can just do for I, fruit and enumerate list of fruits. You get the index and the element out of the list. The next control flow tool we will look into is the break statement. The break statement basically lets you break out of a loop prematurely before it finishes its execution. So let's take an example situation where you have a list of numbers and you need to find the first even number in the list. So we can do this by looping over the elements in the list and checking if they're even. So we can do something like for x in numbers. You can check if they're even by using the if condition. If x modulo 2 is equal 0, this means x is even. You can say print found an even number, x. And then in the end you can do print done. Now if you run this, you will get an output saying found an even number 8 and found an even number 12, which is right. In this list you have two even numbers, 8 and 12. But we are only interested in finding the first even number. We do not want our program to output this line over here. So how do you do this? That's where the break statement comes in. So let's copy paste this exact thing over here. And once you find an even number, so once you get inside the if loop, you can add a break statement. Now let's try running this. And here you will see that you only get the first line and then the line saying done. This is because when it gets inside the if condition, Python will encounter the break statement and it will break out of the loop to get this statement and print done. Finally, we will take a look at the else clause. You've already seen the else statement in the context of an if. You can also use the else clause with a while or a for loop statement. So the else clause will only be executed if the while or the for loop runs to completion. So let's consider the example code above where we were trying to find the first number, even number in the list. Let's consider the case where the list has no even number. In this case, we might want to print something that says no even number was found. So let's consider the list of numbers here, which doesn't have an even number. And I'll paste the code from the above block. And if we run this, what you basically get is done because you never get into this condition and it only prints done. So if you want to have something like, let's just say a print statement that says no even number found, then you can add an else statement here that says print no even number found. Now if you run this, now you will see an output saying no even number found followed by done. Now if we change this back to, let's just say, a list that has some even number in it, and in this case you will see that it prints found an even number, breaks out of the loop, and it gets to this statement over here and it prints done. So what's happening over here is when you have a list without any even number in it, this for loop will run to completion, and once it's done, it will go into the else statement and execute the block of code there. In this case, print no even number found, and then it will exit out of the for loop. That's all for this lesson. See you in the next chapter. Thank you for watching.